So I built a comment moderator agent that saves me around 7 hours of work a week at my job, where I used to have to go through around 200, 300 comments a week, just coming from Facebook. You might have a similar situation where your team needs to reply to comments quickly and effortlessly, or you might want to just get some inspiration on how to build AI agents. But either way, I'm going to try to go as in-depth as possible to make sure you get a lot of cool learnings from this. So before I kind of dive into the workflows here, I think there's two main things that are important to understand. One is I'm using a FastAPI model, and what that is a modern high-performance Python web framework specifically designed for building APIs. The reason I need this is because if I just had all my logic and all my data processing within n8n and within like the AI agent there, it would have been very kind of tedious, and it would be a lot of duplication of efforts, right? I have data processing that needs to happen at multiple levels and in different ways. And I remember when I started the project, I thought I was going to use the AI agent node. So there's literally a node here that is called AI and AI agent. And you could just connect a data. You could connect a chat model to it. You could hook up some memory, add a tool, and just have it process things as if you're just inputting information into like ChatGPT or Claude, right? So that is the central piece of the system that I built. But what makes it different is it's a lot more efficient, and it's processing things at like a very high level without having me to have to make all my workflows super messy within n8n. And then core piece of that FastAPI model is DSPy. And what that is open source Python framework developed by Stanford NLP researchers, and it helps with programming and language models. So its aim is to simplify the development of LLM-powered applications and basically help the training compartment of the models that you're building, right? So with this project, a very core piece of it is to make sure that the AI agent understands what kind of responses I'm looking for, and I want it to get smarter, and eventually for me not to even have to check it at all, right? Because right now it's still, there's a human in the loop, as in nothing goes out there unless it's approved by me, because that way we protect the brand and make sure that if for whatever reason the LLM goes off the rails, which it does sometimes, I'm able to go in and make sure it fixes itself before it goes and decides to post the comments, right? So I think this is a good place to start, just to get a visual understanding of how this system works. So everything in red here is just raw data getting sent from Meta that is available to to process, right? So I actually just ran this workflow just for this demo. And as you can see here, there's nothing here in green or purple because, we didn't get to that step yet. Red is just, all the comments that are being pulled from our ads and a bunch of important IDs to associate with them, right? So if I go to the very top, the ad link is actually made up of C2, which is the page ID, and D2, which is the post ID, right? So if I go on this one, I should pull up one of our ads here. So page ID is a unique identifier for the page, post ID, unique identifier for the post, and comment ID is a unique identifier for that specific comment, which is super key, right? Because once it gets to the process of starting to post, or there's actually 4 actions that it could do. It could either delete it, it could respond to it, it could react, or it could just leave it alone, right? And depending on which one it does, there's a different thing that it needs to do to that specific comment. And the way it accesses that comment was with the comment ID, right? In yellow here, this is everything that LLM kind of processes and decides to do with each individual comment, right? When I started this, it was funny because one of them was literally like, someone just freaking commented anal on one of our posts for whatever reason, which again is really weird. And then someone's like, wrong page, which I thought was funny. But here, even in its early stages, it knew what to do with this. Clearly, it categorized it as inappropriate. Action is to delete this. And the reasoning is this is clearly spam or inappropriate content that has no relevance to lease buyout services or lease business. Should be removed to maintain professional comment environment. I was like, perfect, love it. Like, yes, right? So now in the screen section, this is where the human in the loop part is, right? So if you see here, some of these have V2s and V3s. That's because here I would type no. So let me actually do a quick demo for you guys. I think that would be pretty cool. So I'll go back to this project. Sorry, this workflow here, but I already processed all this, and this is what put in the yellow section and the red section. So now I'll just do one comment real quick where, like this one, right? Jeeps typically, you make money at the end to buy out this time KS 30K, and they only sell for 29K. I don't think you can help me in this one, right? So it's clearly a negative and skeptical comment that's saying that they probably have negative equity in their lease. So the company I work at, we offer auto lease buyout loans. So typically, one of the key factors to determine if it makes sense to buy out a lease is see if there's equity in the car. So, the buyout price that you have in your contract for your auto lease, if it is lower than the market value, then usually you have positive equity in that spread. So I think he's saying there's negative equity because he's saying, to buy it out is 38K and they're only going for 29K. So if he buys it out, he's going to lose $9,000, right? So he's like, you can't help me with this one. So this is actually a great question to look at because it'll be pretty hard to, one, to come up with a response yourself, right? One, you have to refute why our services are still valuable. And two, it's a very valid argument. So let's see what it comes up with. So it says we need to respond. And it says, yeah, you're right. The lease is underwater by around 9K, like we just talked about. But that doesn't automatically mean a buyout doesn't make sense. The key is comparing your total cost to buyout versus leasing or buying something comparable. Sometimes even underwater buyouts can save money long term. We help with financing regardless of whether the lease has positive or negative equity. So I think that's a perfect response because, it's saying, yes, I agree with your argument, but we still make sense depending on your other options out there, right? So this is a very respectful and knowledgeable comment that I think is great. So here I would write yes, right? And then let's see if there's a comment here that I think would need some improvement. So, okay, for this one, right? Now with y'all's rates. This one I would delete. So, dang, it's doing a really, really good job. And that's because I optimized the prompt, so let me jump around here a little bit. But the DSPy framework, it's set up through GitHub, right? So I have my main code here in main.py, and this runs like, the whole kind of backend model. Grabs the Anthropic key from Claude. It loads in the database. And then there's a couple things, but this is the main thing I want to kind of show is this is business rules, which gets applied to every comment that this tool processes, right? So I have very specific criteria on what it needs to do. And this is like been optimized over many iterations, maybe like 30 iterations total. And it's like every time, I go through a batch, if there's like something consistent that I see that needs to be improved, I'm like, okay, let's add that in. So I think one of the new ones I added was, website CTA. It would consistently like pitch our services to anyone, regardless of what they are asking or what sentiment they have, even if they sound like they clearly would never be a customer. So one of the things I needed to add was like, it's not for casual browsers or general questions. High intent prospects showing clear purchase intent. That's who the website CTA should go to, which is fill out the form on our site, right? So this has been helpful, but also the training module part of it is also very helpful because like this code right here, it loads our training data. And what the training data is all the thousands of approved comments that I've processed during the time that I've been using this tool. And also like, I think 200 for like initial ones I put in. But the cool thing is right now, if there's any comment that comes in that's very similar to what we had before, it's going to match it with what it has in the data. And it will respond with a similar response that has been approved already. So, theoretically over time, it should know like how to respond to every single comment possible. Because usually there's some theme around, the comments that are not completely retarded. And, it's going to pick that up. And then, most of my workflow with this would be just every morning check in, approve. Maybe there's one or two that are disapproved, and then run it. And then I'll show you what happens when I disapprove it. Hopefully, there's at least one comment here that it did bad. Okay, it's never worth to buy a release. That's actually not always true. It depends on your specific lease terms and current market values. Many drivers find significant value in buying out of the lease, especially when the residual value is below current market price. Each situation is unique and requires proper analysis to determine if it makes financial sense. So I think this is a good response, but maybe it could be shorter, right? So that would be my feedback. So for this column, instead of yes, I put no. And then on this one, right of it, for feedback text, I'm just saying like, let's shorten it, right? So now we have two scenarios, one yes, one no. And the way it knows to only touch these two is because here with purple is the columns that mark when it's saved or when it's executed, right? So basically ignore those, because when it checks if it's saved or if it's new, if it's posted, it will see that it is. So, obviously ignore it. So right now I have a Slack message that gets sent once the daily processing is done, and that gets sent directly to me. So, from Mark, our assistant. So after I go through all the comments and either approve or disapprove them, I'll go here and execute this workflow. And this basically will go and do everything it needs to do. So the ones that are approved, it's going to go and post it and save it to the training data, and then Slack me that everything is done, right? So that's what's kind of going on here. And then on the bottom here, for that one row that we said no, it's going to go back and try to apply the feedback to it and make a better response. So let's see what it did here. The one that was no is now pending. And then let's see if it's shorter than it. Yeah, so now this is a lot shorter. So clearly it did what we asked it to. So that was the demo. Yeah, let me go through the n8n code just line by line. You could probably skip this part if this is going to be boring for you. But for my more technical viewers, I'll show you what's happening at every step. And, I think hopefully you'll see that there's a method to all this madness. So, this shows like what is happening at each step and the inputs and outputs from each node to the next. So first we have a Facebook API that goes to the ad account and gets all the ads, right? So I have my limit set to 100. There's very specific fields that I'm looking for. And then you also want to have pagination set up, because Meta only allows you to, get a certain amount of data per call. So you're going to want to stagger that out. And I do max pages as 20. But if I do that now, I'm going to have to wait here 5 minutes for it to process everything. So that's basically going to return 2,000 new posts. And it usually sorts it by newest date. So it's going to give you 2,000 of the most recent post IDs that it finds. And what I also discovered in this project is each ad has maybe 30 post IDs, because every time you go in and you update it, change the copy a little bit or make any small changes, it will literally make another post ID. So that's why I'm getting so many of them, because I want to make sure I don't miss any. And then here I'm just parsing the new post IDs. So we have one item coming in and 100 items coming out. So, that way we could process each item individually. So we're parsing the array here. Now I'm filtering by past 14 days. So this is looking at past 14 days of the post ID being made. And why that makes sense is because we actually already have a database of all the post IDs and accounts. So we're just adding in new ones that have been added recently, right? So here there's 20. That's probably from me making one or two new ads, because, different placements, different, just different variables, which makes it look at them as different post IDs. So that's what, this code is doing here. After that, we are separating from Facebook and Instagram. Right now, I'm not replying to comments on Instagram as much because for some reason, our audience there is like basically dumber. They have dumber comments that don't need to be replied to as much. And we also have less volume of comments because our distribution is higher on Facebook. So right now I'm not touching it, but this system could easily be implemented for Instagram as well. And then what I'm doing here is adding new post IDs to our database of post IDs. So here's where a FastAPI system comes in, because I'm using an HTTP request node, which is usually used for APIs, but it's for my own like API, right? So, I created this custom URL I created it in GitHub, right? And then I connected GitHub to Railway, which is where I'm hosting my server to process API requests. So if you look here, what this does is literally anytime I deploy new code into DSPy, like let's say I need to make another adjustment to the logic, I would literally update this code by using Claude. Like I would literally just post all the code to Claude and be like, hey, check difference between this and this, something's not working. And then it finds the problem and it fixes it and gives me the whole new code. I put it back in and, rock and rolling. So that's kind of my process there. And while this is active, we also have Postgres here. And what that does is it has all my data tables stored here, right? So one of them is actually Facebook posts. And this stores all the individual posts and their respective post IDs and object store IDs. And this is what I use to get the comments, right? So if you go back to n8n, after I add the new post IDs that are unique from the past 14 days, then I do a get method for my HTTP request to get all of the post IDs I currently have. And then I parse it again. So I have 186 unique ads. I get comments on all of them. And then let me just show you this real quick. So I'm pulling the object story ID from that database, which is how you get the unique comments per ad, right? So then I'm finally, getting closer to getting to the root of, what I'm trying to work with, which is the comments on those ads. So a bit of layering here involved. So I get all the comments from those and then I parse all the comments. So, I kind of break them out into individual items. And then I filter by unreplied comments. So look here, it seems like there's only 20 that needs to be replied to, which is great. And then here, this long node, it just goes from the very beginning and it just checks the comment mod log. So it's checking this sheet and it's pulling out the comments to confirm that I'm not duplicating my efforts anywhere, right? So if I already replied to it, if I have yes under executed, it's gonna not return it basically. So that there's 20 that are confirmed that are not in a log, which means all the new ones are really new. And then I need to have a wait node here because I noticed if I have too many requests to Google Sheets too quickly, sometimes it gives me errors, and obviously we want to avoid those. So this is a 5-minute wait because this works in the background, so I don't care about the time. And then it's going to post those new mod comments into the mod log. So that is everything in red is what it posts. And then after that, we wait a bit more. And finally, we get to the fun part, which is looping through and processing each comment. So the reason I need a loop is because whenever I have more than 20 items, sometimes it overloads the server. So I believe what this does is it does batches of 10. So this actually ran, I don't know why I ran 30 times. Should have ran, yeah. So this ran, okay. So this ran 2 times, it looks like. Because the third time, it didn't loop. It just pushed it to done. So yeah, so we're putting in batches of 10, and each time it gets sent again back to our custom API, sends through all the variables that the agent needs to make a decision, and then outputs its suggested action. And if it's a respond, then it also outputs the suggested reply. So now, we get that for each individual comment. And then after that, I just post it into the Google Sheet. So that's yellow sections. And then after that, we aggregate it. This is just to make sure that Slack doesn't send 20 messages. Because if I don't have this aggregate node, it's going to go from 20 items it's going to post 20 times because it sees 20 items. So that's just to make sure, hey, one Slack message to, the responses. And then here, I think we saw it in action already, but just to kind of walk through this with you. This checks the feedback. So this just reads the whole sheet. It checks where it is in terms of approvals. So here, it could either be pending, it could be approved, which is yes, or it could be not approved, which is no, right? And then sometimes there's nothing there, and that also doesn't, means we don't do anything with it. So I'll go through the not approved one because it's a bit quicker, but this one uses the same business logic as the process comment endpoint, but here it has a bit more context to know that need to look at the feedback and apply it to make sure that the new response is better. So if we go here real quick, if I could find it, and the light is off. Let me turn it on real quick. So just here, I'm kind of showing code behind the process comment endpoint and also the process feedback endpoint, right? So both are pretty similar in terms of what they do. If we look here, the only difference is process feedback. The prompt is you're improving a response based on human feedback for release end. Here's the original comment, your original response, original action, and human feedback. Business rules, that's what we saw in the top there where, very specific criteria on how to approach the comments. And then this asks to generate an improved response, incorporating the feedback while following the guidelines above. Answer the original comment, not the feedback. This is another thing I had to add in because sometimes it would look at the feedback and it would answer the feedback directly as opposed to, addressing the comment. So cool. So yeah, once this is done, it adds the new response to the Google Sheet and then it just slacks me that, hey, the revisions have been done. Then, this is where the looping part comes in because it might go through several iterations where I have to be no, this is not good. V3, nope, still not good. V4, okay, great, this is great. So yes, then once yes, it goes through the higher section here. And this is pretty straightforward. It will check if it's safe to training. If it's not safe to training, it will save it. And the training is going to be here in the Postgres, here under responses. So we have 96 pages of responses, around 1,000 comments that have been processed with the exact action reply, if there is one, and also the reasoning, which I learned helps it get more context on why the specific response was picked, and it helps it actually reason better with this training data. So that I thought that was pretty cool. So you make sure it saves it to that. Checks saved, and then this is just a branch to prove action to determine what it needs to do. So if it needs to delete, react, respond, those all are pretty straightforward because we're just passing through the comment ID, and with JSON, we're kind of telling it what to do, right? So here, I think the endpoints are also different. So here it's comments. Then, for example, delete. I think there's a delete endpoint somewhere here. Yeah, method delete. So the method is different. Here it's probably react, post likes. So yeah, there's very specific ways that it needs to be done. But again, with Claude, I'm able to have all these answers questioned, and it helps me, kind of sidestep any deep documentation dives that I would have to do without it. So, I think the cool thing with this whole project is I am not very tech, I have zero tech background. I just kind of understand what needs to be done and what good questions to ask. And, with Claude and a bunch of credits, you could literally build anything if you have enough time. And, I think that's the cool part about this. But it also makes sense to pay someone to do this if you just don't have time. I found this project pretty fun and want to learn. So for me, it made sense. But for you, you might want to hire someone and implement it and save you time and money in your business or, wherever you're working. So I hope this was helpful. This is my first video. I'm doing like a deep dive into the project, and I'm going to do more of these, and I'm going to get better every time. So, if this one's a bit unclear, you can provide any feedback you want. I definitely would appreciate it. And if you want like those exact templates of what I built here, if you see it being helpful for your business, just send me an email and I can share that with you. So yeah, thanks a lot.